Hello, good morning. I see that Great Lakes revisited the site. Looking a little scary. Uh, Put a question up for me. And as we ended the last video, Scotty Boy had a question for me. We'll wait a minute or two and see if those gentlemen are around to join us. Well, I guess I'm enjoying my day off. More props. What have I been up to? We're going to talk about structures for a bit. When we ended last, we were talking about beehives, and I had suggested that maybe we should talk about ant colonies. And so what are these structures? Well, where to begin? No one joining us yet. We were talking about this structure. This is the Mayan depiction of the chart of elements. That this is a structure. That this top one here, atomic number 118, una octium. This can only exist if all of the structure is first. So as we started here with the smallest hydrogen, and then we flipped hydrogen and added another hydrogen, we created helium, and then we began to spiral outwards. Lithium, and then through sodium, from argon we jump to potassium, and out we spiral. Krypton, rubidium, and we keep spiraling outward and outward, and we cannot have this element until this other structure is completely built. So another thing I didn't talk about was left hand and right hand handshakes, that when we were combining these anions and cations from both sides of the chart, from this line down here, that there's a left hand and right hand handshake, and that's why this works. That when we take an element from this side, let's suppose it was a left hand, that this one would have a right hand, that the left and the left can't make that bond and couple. So, what else would I like to say about this? Well, I can take this structure and use it to describe other structures. In the case of the beehive, we were talking about a hierarchy. So if we made this center here the queen, and those that serve the queen fill one or two of these rings, and then we have the worker bees that are all these bees that go out and through their freedom fly around outside of the hive and collect, eat and collect and enjoy while they're out. And they bring back the honey, and that honey is distributed by the others, and then those all serve the queen. But the queen doesn't sit and do nothing. The queen is at work. Each piece of this structure does a very vital, important job, and that this hive is a family, and that all the members participate and do specific tasks. And I would argue that this isn't just a family, that this is a tribal structure. And I keep going back to tribes. Why? Because there's wisdom in those things. That there's things that are patterned after nature, and that we can learn from those things from nature. we need to apply them to building our own structures. That when a second queen is established, it's forced out of the hive, and that a handful of worker bees will come with her, maybe as few as 3, and the chances of that queen surviving is limited. But there's an exodus, that there's another family starting, another hive starting, that if anything happened to this hive, that exiting queen might continue to be. It's all about keeping the cycle going, the life cycle. And we went now from here to the ant colony. The ants, again, a family. Again, each having specific jobs. Amazing things that go on with the ant colonies. Okay, we have the center again. Everybody involved in feeding and creating and keeping the I'm not even sure if they call it a queen, but we'll suggest that it is called a queen because I'm not even certain. That there are those that service the queen. There are those ants that go out and go out and forage for food, and they're busy building structures as well. That when these ants get out on the ground, they travel in these strange patterns. And they've even looked at these and studied them, and they found out that they could create algorithms from the way these ants march and look for food. And once they find this food, they bump into each other even, and they communicate with their antennae. And they don't seem to cross the same paths much. In other words, that structure of that, whatever logic there is using, would be potentially valuable if you were setting up an algorithm. That the queen can store sperm, that it can have multiple mates, and that it can be selective as to which ones are pollen, or which ones are fertilized, and which ones are not, and that there's an inner circle as well. I believe the males are not fertilized and they become male, and the others become something less than that. And there again, there's spin-off, and there's this tribal, the forcing out of the colony. So, but again, everyone doing their work. There's nobody not participating in this process. So now the tough one. We're talking about structures. So that we started with the chart of elements. Great Lakes, hello, I hope you're well. I saw that you had a question up for me. We'll get to that. As been busy. I'm going to relate this chart as well. As I was telling you that the hives of the bees and the colonies of the ants are family structures. We have the same structures. That I will say that hydrogen here is a representation of the masculine, and that helium here is the representation of the feminine. And that the hydrogen, I'll argue, is the freest, that because of its single electron, that as it makes bonds, it can move at different angles and make connections that other elements can't. As I was talking about these left hand and right hand handshakes, well, maybe it's a hand and a half with hydrogen, because it has that flexibility to alter its orbital as it's trying to make those bonds. And then if we flip that hydrogen, it recombines with another hydrogen, and then we create helium, the first of the nobles, a very stable element, the very center of stability, if you will. And that's why I give it the classification of the feminine energy. What does that mean? That the feminine energy, I cautiously approach this, represents this unconditional love, those that give birth, that they have superior intellect, or not intellect, but intuition, that there's this caring, sharing, nurturing needed when we begin this family, that the masculine does have an equal part in this, that it's to create security, if you will. And that when these two, just as when the hydrogen flips and catches another hydrogen, it starts a dance, an eternal dance, if you will. Well, when these two come together here and we start this family, then we can have lithium, we can have the firstborn, and then we can start filling this circle here, being potentially children. I'm not suggesting that we need 6 children each family. That's another story. That within this structure, we have the children, we have other family members, and I would suggest that this line here that was also in the magic numbers, these 6 and 14, the grandparents from both sides, that this family structure needs stability, and that the family members need to work together just like they do in the hive, that the stability is important, that the family structure is important, that we need to shore up that family structure any way we can. And that is important, that the failure of the family structure. This can be the extended family and the community. All of these, everything comes together. All things are connected. That everything's about what happens here and the continuation. That these structures need to be kept. They need to have strong bonding. Well, hi, Anne Marie. Hi, Great Lakes. Who else? Where's Scotty Boy? He had the question about structure. So we covered ants, bees, family structures. We didn't talk about this being a tribe yet. And I could talk about decentralization as well. That actually when the queen bee pushes out the other queen, that's decentralizing. And the same with the ants. And that can be true with the children here as well. But this decentralization, this spreading out, that this system is less corruptible. When we get to the really large systems, the larger and the more complex they are, we get into complex systems that we can't know what's going on in everywhere. Well, we can, but it's not easy. What I'm suggesting is larger isn't always better. That in this globe that we live in right now, this world that is ours, this gift that was given humanity, that we have failed to preserve. This right now in this society that we live, this is as fragile as an egg. Why? Why? Because we haven't decentralized. That when we just keep building bigger and bigger structures, bigger and bigger cities, putting all our what is the saying? Putting all the eggs in one basket. That we have a centralized power generating system. When we broadcast that power out, that 25% of it is lost to ground. In other words, these wires that run across and transmit our power, 25% of it is lost to ground. In other words, if this was a village and we had a centralized power system, there would be a 25% gain right there alone. That if this is a village again, and they produce the majority of their food, and it doesn't have to be transported, then there's a huge savings. What else does it protect against? If there's a crop failure here or there, anywhere, that the more that we can combine into these smaller systems and the more self-sufficient they are. Well, why didn't we do that from the beginning? Well, there were some guys, these dark figures, that knew that we could be controlled if we followed that path. That the money was part of that system. That this doesn't just represent our energy, our freedom, that this also represents our resources, our vital resources, and then the control of those resources, the limiting of those resources. Where if we could come up with a structure where this is a village, and the village had their own money, and they had their own, I would like to see no money. I would like to see everything be about trading and some sort of a credit system built. That's what we need to do. These are my opinions. These are my thoughts. These are my ideas. But ideally, that there could be a tribal money, if you will, that works here in this community, and a neighboring community could share the same currency. That if you wanted to do some travel, that there would be a continental currency that you could take for exchange. That if you wanted to go abroad, from here to Europe, to Africa, to South America, that there could be an international standard of some sort. That we need to limit these, and there should be, it's buried over here. It's buried over here. Now, structure. We can have logic structures, computer structures. Here's one that I did in 2001. This was about collecting and storing heat. That this is structured logic. That these diamonds represent questions normally. The if, then, else structure in computer language. That if a condition is true, then do this. If it's not, then do this. Else do this. The three branches. And these can be nested. In other words, a diamond on top of a diamond on top of a diamond. What you have to be careful of when you're doing computer logic is that you don't get into an infinite loop. We've been in an infinite loop for some time now. A loop or a spiral or spiraling down. What was under the board that I wanted? This is how the solar system should be set up. Let's touch on this. Let's touch on this for a moment. One thing I wrote on here was heat. 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 When I was talking about this structure, you got a friend that's a physicist? Just ask him this one little simple question. Where's the heat stored, guys? Where's the heat stored? Is the heat stored in the electron? In the neutron, the proton? Is the heat stored in the whole structure? Is the heat stored in a vortex around the structure? Where's the heat stored, guys? Simple question. Where's the heat stored? How is it transferred? Simple questions. But you got to ask the right questions. All right, I was digging over here for something. Something to do with money and structure. What do I have here? Profit. Prophecy. I know you can't see this, but if the solar system was actually put into place like it was in its origins, then we would see this structure. By me putting it in there for my own work, for my own mind, so that I could oversimplify things, so I could see what was going on better, to grasp it, even put in the the satellites of the. We'll touch on some of that again another day. We were talking about money. We were talking about this should be an important topic. This should be a whole program. Fear. Another one. Ego. So much to cover, so little time. Grow. What was I? Where was I going with that? The W's. Who, what, where, when, why. The trash. The insults. They need to be in the trash. The idea maybe we can keep just because it has this I in it. The ego. It has to go. The questions are good. They're valid. Is it possible that we could take this W from the questions and put it over here, and instead of having ego, we have we go? Elimination of the ego. The I. I feel like changing topics. Yeah, I want to clean up. That's what I was doing today. What have I got here? Remember, I brought the garbage can in here. Why? I'm talking about throwing away words. I'm talking about a new language. One of these books right here is a dictionary. It needs to go. We need to create a new one. We need to create a new language. We've already started. There's wisdom in what's already started, these memes. These are some of the books that I'm keeping. These are some of the books that need to go. Here's one. Optical crystallography. Why would this one need to go? Can you see that, guys? It says Chrysler Defense Engineering Library. This book was published in 43, I think. 43. It entered the library at the Chrysler Manufacturing in 1960. What was going on with that? What we weren't at war. Oh, we were in the Cold War. The Cold War started in 1960. What was Chrysler doing? Why? They're an auto manufacturer, for God's sakes. Why would they have a defense engineering department at the Chrysler, the auto manufacturer? Got this at a great secondhand bookstore. The library card that's still in it, I've got some names of people that checked it out. They would be interesting to look up. It suggests it was checked out 83 and 91. I don't know how often they issue a card. Might have been filled up once before. It was there since 1960. What were they doing? Why were they studying crystals at Chrysler? What technology were they developing? Wouldn't we like to know? Why does it need to go? Well, I think it needs to go because of the spirit of why it got there in the first place. I won't use the word anymore. Peace. The opposite of peace. Okay. Nostradamus, most of his work is done. There's some later dates. It's on the board over here as well. Prophecy. Introduction to Nuclear Physics. This is what got us into trouble, guys. 1966. Now, this wasn't in the library there. Half of this data in here is incorrect. Uh, Most, but probably half. So, what do we cut the book in half? Do we take out the marker and redact it? What do? I think we start over again. I think we start anew. While we're creating that new language, we might as well fix these books. There needs to be some books. Most of it could be online. That might require another fix. Fundamental of X-ray and radium physics. Same problem. This represents the house of cards that we've created. We've got theory upon theory upon theory, all built on a rickety foundation. And when the lowest theories fail, then all the rest are affected. So when we correct the knowledge over here, most of this becomes obsolete. Quantum mechanics. Oh no, there can't be anything. Yeah, there is. Power plants. Steam mechanical fundamentals. You see here, there's a beaker here, boiling water making steam. We replace the water here in our nuclear power plants with a core of, we've got nothing more than a big steam kettle in our nuclear power plants. We gotta clean that up. We have to fix that. We have to figure out how to get rid of the waste. It needs to go. Electricity and magnetism. Now, why does this one need to go? Well, if we knew that electricity and much of these things will survive, but there is no separation here. That electricity is magnetism. Everything about electricity is magnetism. Once you understand have a better understanding of magnetic, you can understand that it is purely a magnetic function. Cleaning house, guys. Wanted to say something else about that. Electricity and magnetism. It's going to explain a lot of things. The stairway to heaven. There is no heaven. When we understand reincarnation better, that if there's a heaven, then it's just a temporary stop to our next destination, like the train station, if you will. So what's going on? If there's no heaven, that we have to better understand consciousness. There's right now, there's this new age movement of love and light, and we can go back to the beehive. We got these people that love and light. Don't worry about all the ills of the world. I don't care. I'm love and light. I'm going to be saved. I'm going to heaven. I'm going to ascend. I'm going to experience ascension. Dream on. What I've recently got some confirmation that's pretty exciting, that we're not taking the easy path, guys. We're taking a hard path. We're going to stay here and fix this. That wasn't my decision. It wasn't some great spirit in the sky's decision. It was the collective consciousness of this planet that made this decision. Okay. God and the gods. There's a source, there's a creator. I serve no gods. I honor the creator. I'm running out of time. I'm going to start the dictionary. We need to, this has been part of our structured control. The very words that if there's an animal that's not in here, it doesn't exist. This is a control structure. That limits us. It limits our thought. That there's universal symbols that our language should be symbolic. Our emojis, a simple character can have great meaning. I have some of the keepers here. I have 3 copies of this. Why do I need 3? Well, this one actually has some of these characters, and I haven't got to study this much. But these characters, although they're cumbersome, but they can be improved. But the beauty of understanding them, that there can be much depth in just a single character, that there's got to be a reason why that consciousness and in other out there in this mix that surrounds us, our star brothers, and there's a universal language, and it's a lot of it is symbolic and symbols. Okay. Yeah, we have the English language. We have to have a whole book of synonyms, words that mean words that mean words. Again, that we can clean this up when we create our new language. We, not me, we. Physics, of course, that one's a no-brainer. Half of the book is correct, half of it's incorrect. How do you salvage that mess? Am I getting anybody mad? I have to run, but should be back in about 15 minutes. Okay, we'll wait for you, Great Lakes. I'm going to go a little long. I'm getting behind. Rockefellers, Rothschilds. My opinions also. Your question was about the moon, free energy, and the anti-gravity technology. Nikola Tesla. Yeah. Okay, what do we got here? Essentials of chemistry. This alters chemistry as well. This gives us a new insight into chemistry. When I've released this and this thing takes hold, there's going to be a whole new understanding. And that answers part of your question, Great Lakes. Yes, anti-gravity technology. How about we call it turning off the gravity? How about we call it gravity reduction systems? You don't have to call it anti-anything, anti-matter. There can be matter, and then there can be, in fact, I told you that the antimatter exists. How about that it's right inside of the atom itself? That there's no need for it being somewhere else. That it's built right into the particle. You got the anti, then why call it anti? It's all part of the matter. The Bible. This is also the Old and New Testament. This was a control structure. That there's, I've studied this book. I've read it cover to cover. I've read some sections 30 times. That there's a mixture, that this has been so badly tainted, that there are good things in this Bible. But there again, what do we do? Do we redact everything that we shouldn't be looking at in it? Do we leave it up to the individual? I could say we could leave it up to this is my library. I'm not suggesting book burning. This is my library. This is how I choose. That will I keep a copy of this around? I will. Will I redact it? No, I won't. But I know which sections that I won't visit anymore. I know that where the truth is. The Old Testament talks about the Atlanta period. Um, you know, there's some wonderful things in Psalms and Corinthians and Acts, and there's, but so much of it has been twisted and manipulated that this book was created in 325 by the Nicene Council in Rome, and that it can be debunked. These stories, there's authors, I don't have to do this. There's authors out there doing this already. They're already showing you, proving with reason, without a reasonable doubt, that the Romans did manipulated this, and that these stories are been perverted and they're incorrect. But there's still some beautiful text in here. And I didn't find, and those, I mean, we could take this wonderful things in this book and we could put it into a book this small. This book, I said, I've hardly scratched the surface of this book. That these short little passages are meant to be read and then contemplated. It may take a day to contemplate some of these. That this is similar as well to the traditions handed down by the American Indians, that they're simple stories that one can read and get one interpretation. The same was true of the Bible. And then 10 years could pass, and you could read the same passage and get a new meaning, because the text hasn't changed. That you've grown and your consciousness is expanded, and that now you're ready for a greater teaching. And we were talking about this, we testing. We have been testing. We have been testing and testing and testing ourselves. No one testing us, ourselves. I told you I had a confirmation. We passed the test, guys. We're going to take the hard route. We're going to take the hard route. We're going to fix this mess. We're going to work together. We're going to come together. We're going to take some new knowledge. Some wonderful new knowledge. We're going to figure out how to fix things. We're going to go. Things are going to happen. We're going to make it happen. I'm a facilitator. I will facilitate the happenings. We are going to do the work. No slackers allowed. Everybody's got a job. There's plenty of work. The Astronomical Almanac. No, this is a 205 edition. This is going to be severely updated as well. Let's talk about this one. This is a physical desk reference. I guess I better put it that way. What's this guy? A list of all the drugs. Look at the size of that book. Drugs and their descriptions. This one's old enough right here that it still has the section in the back. I didn't look at this morning, but there's a section in the back here that lists all the potential side effects of drugs. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they've removed that since these, in newer editions, that they've actually pulled that section out. Why? Well, there was a gal, brilliant gal, who studied business first and then became a doctor, a physician, went to medical school. I think her business came out of Yale. She came from the slum. She wanted to go back to the slum and start a practice for her family, her tribe, her people, whatever, to the poor. She wanted to do good work. During her medical school, she did extensive research on how modern medicine, including pharmaceuticals, how that has extended our life. And she was alarmed and upset when she found out that it really wasn't extending our lives. And she was so upset about it that she talked to her instructors, and the instructors blew her off. And they sent her upstairs. You know how you You got a problem? Send it upstairs. And at that point, she was told, next year it'll all make sense. Don't worry about it. She finished her education. She started her practice. Having a Harvard business degree and knowing how the insurance companies and everything work, she knew she was in trouble, because if she followed their guidelines and her patients couldn't afford some of these scripts, then she'd be in trouble. So she was practicing some things that she wasn't educated with, some alternative methods. They ran her out of the country, literally. When she got out of the country, she started a radio program, and she'd go in here and she would talk about these warnings. They ran her out of the country. She was victorious. She made such a stink, they took it out of the book. They didn't want anybody to access it, not make it easily accessible. Well, we're through that pile. Now, here's some of the books that I am keeping. Anybody having any fun? No child still continues. Bud floods. I don't think I'm ready to talk about bud floods, although I am aware. Take a look at this. Some of these are the books that I am keeping. We're going to learn a lot more about crystals and light. Taito Chen, we talked about that earlier a little bit. A wonderful book. Mystical Foundations. Yes, the metaphysics. We've been kept. This is one of the things that they purposely edited. Big time. They did not want us to know about this stuff. Some symbolism. Now, if I had a sight book, it'd be down there in that pile too. That if we knew more about metaphysics, that we wouldn't need a psychiatrist. I really truly believe that. But Jung's is keeper because of his symbols and his study of that. And the fundamental study of human nature. Those are all valid things to recognize. Paradise Lost. Well, it's a classic. You can't see there's wisdom in this. The wisdom is what we're after here. Well, these are things I'm putting in my box. My box is empty, remember? Life after life. This life after life. Here again, we don't understand the nature of our existence. It's been kept from us. All of this is about Genesis being revisited. That this is the end of the fourth and the beginning of the fifth world. This is not like the third to the fourth. This is very, very different. What's about to happen is going to be very different than anything that we've experienced humanity in the past. This is going to be a really huge leap for mankind. Going to the moon, we did that in the past. Strangers among us. What does this suggest? This suggests that we have guides, we have other incarnated beings that are birthed and raised, but they're not. The soles of their feet haven't been here. That they've come from outside, somewhere from out here, and these other star families, and they've come here to help usher us through this very important time right now. And they didn't know, and they couldn't know, that these decisions that have been made in the last 4 years were uncertain. And there's still some uncertainty but I've got some confirmation. I think it's good news. forbidden history. So, some years ago, when I made my initial discoveries and was still very excited about it before I had lost all hope in humanity, when I was still excited, I thought, you know what? When I get done with this is what I'm after. Forbidden history. I want to go out and find the real history. Fascinated by it. I want to know about it. I want to learn from it. As we should all. That to build wisdom, you have to have knowledge, and then that is only part of it. That's why we experience. Okay. I'm going to have to tear this stuff down too. Yeah, everything's out of the box. Luther. I wanted to talk about Luther. This is going to get this cleaning this up too. Luther. Who is Martin Luther? This is just about history repeating itself. 4th century Luther started the movement away from the Roman Catholic Church. There was a spin-off religion. What's the significance of that 400 years ago? 1960s. We had our second Luther, Martin Luther King. This was also Martin Luther. What was that about? There again, it was even though the African American or the black or however they would like to be identified had achieved their freedom, that there was still this segregation, and even today there's this economic slavery that goes on, that the playing field isn't level, guys. Equality is equality is equality. That hierarchies, if we went back to the beehive, the queen has no greater power than the rest, that all the unit work together, all are equal in value, equal in importance, just as we are all equal in importance, equal in value. I'm no greater or lesser than you. I have no master, nor should you. Okay, let me clean this up. Cleaning up stuff. Moving on. Fear. This should have been in bigger print. Fear. What is that? Fear. Why are we talking about profit, prophecy, interest, investing, limitedness, insult? Well, insult, idea. This is some of the structures in our language that need to go. What do we say about insult? There should be no insult. When you're insulting me, you're insulting. We can differ. There's zero reason for insult. Ideas? Fine. How about that? Talked about moving this W over here to ego. I worry about ego. You see, if I'm fearless and I have no doubt, the doubt is simply fear, masked fear, if you will. So I have to have no doubt. Can I really do that? That's hard. You can work at it though. Profit, currencies, control systems. Now, there should be no profit. Why has it got this structure? Prophecy. That we should be interested in prophecy. We should be interested in science. We should be interested in music. We should be interested in art. There should be no interest on money. That we make investments. We take our money and make investments. For instance, if this was a nursing home insurance where fear. We're in fear that no one will take care of us. We have to have an insurance to take care of us. That we invest our time, our money, our energy into our fears. We have auto insurance because we fear we're going to have a wreck. We have home insurance because we fear that we're going to have a loss. So what happens if you have a home and you do have a loss? Well, if you have the right structure, that these things can self-heal. Just like when we were talking about time, that if we changed any portion of this timeline, that it mends itself. Like what happened in 2010, which probably kicked all of this off. So, grow. Can't remember why I put it on the board. I know there was a good reason. Now, I've talked enough about structures in my house cleaning. Let's see. I know Great Lakes, we all bleed red. Yeah, why is the blood red? Iron. What's so special about iron? It's magnetic. You wanted to exchange things, other elements. Why not use something that's really magnetic? Mud floods, I don't think I can. Tertarians. Nikola Tesla. Well, energy and anti-gravity technology. I'm pretty certain that they exist already in the Department of Defense. What the other reason, why was Chrysler involved? Why didn't they just, if they had these technologies that they were developing, why would they involve Chrysler? Well, if they were going to mass produce something, why would you want to go out and build a new factory? If you needed, if the Cold War was on, again, I don't even want to use that word, that you're building all these defenses, and you need it done now. That you're feeding the fear. That fear grows paranoia, and we started down this spiral. It didn't happen in the last 1,000 years or 2,000 years. This spiral started maybe 90,000 years ago. I'm not sure. TR3B, under cabal control. I don't know these things. I have to stick with what I know, Great Lakes. I know who you're watching. I haven't had a lot of time to get out there and look at any of YouTube, but I know who you're watching. Where was I going with that? Oh, the defense contractors. So I talked about this as being scientific knowledge. That you can't, I put it in the description. I didn't even cover it in a video. That knowledge, you can't copyright knowledge. You can copyright papers. You can copyright secret formulas. You can copyright inventions. You can patent inventions. You can patent all kinds of things, proprietary rights to all these ideas. This is what has got us in trouble, guys. That by saying that this is part of our defense, that we're so paranoid that we have to keep all this stuff secret, that some of this technology the Great Lakes keeps referring to, it exists. It's under the realm of top secret, because if it got out to our enemies, like we have enemies, what? Point being is, one lie leads to another lie. One secret leads to more secrets. That these powerful defense contractors and these politicians that sit around these large tables, they don't have to pass money under the table to pay off. They can just pass information that the legislators can pass laws prior to passing the laws, that investments can be made and that money can be gained by having insider information. There's that if a defense contractor patents technology that it's outside of the realm of the government, that there's no documents to release. It's owned by a company. It's owned by a corporation. Rabbit holes go deep. Yeah, they do. So, the moon. You wanted to know about the moon. Well, yeah, pretty certain the moon isn't a real structure, not a natural planet. Or it was a natural planet, but it was converted. I can't know that for certain. I can talk about its orbit and how strange it is, and how that orbit is tied to Mercury, which I believe was originally our moon. We could talk about that there around the world, around the globe, there are ancient languages and there are ancient cultures, some in Africa, some in Australia, some in North America. Many of them, some of the oldest written language, spoken language, China. And I'm betting that they're sitting on a wealth of things that they're yet to share, that it's possible they'll begin to share these things in this Genesis process, this us rediscovering us and coming together and starting to fix these things. Frequencies, manipulation, spaceship, yeah. Just what you're watching. Well, let's talk about frequencies a little bit, just a little bit. Let's talk about, I brought up heat. Heat. Can't really get to that. I need a prop. Well, we'll just clean up a little more here. Oh, there's a prop. Heat. Frequency. Anti-gravity. Vesicapiscus. Latin. Fish bladder. This is about the atomic theory, the Rutherford model that was preceded by the plum pudding model. And here they're talking about equilibrium and normal atom and a heated atom here. And that they envisioned that these atoms circled around this nucleus, and that they had a charge, and that charge created a magnetic field. And then when excited, this planet type thing that's circling around the nucleus shot off to a new orbital. Oh, it's like fairy tales. Excuse me. Heat, anti-gravity, frequency. Austin, in hope. I don't know if this is visible to the camera. I hope my voice is visible to the mic. Frequency. If we were to think about this large set of rings as being the orbital of, let's say, hydrogen, just to keep it simple, that's all we need is those two black ones here. This one and this one. And let's call that ambient state. That's a temperature. That as whatever heat source, which heat is kinetic energy, which is motion, we're here at motion that matters, that as this structure heats up, and I wish you could see these, you can kind of see them. Where I can fix that. This mark here and this mark here. This is 360 in a circle, so this is 120. So this is 2/3 of the circle, and this inner part is 1/3 of the circle. So as this structure receives more kinetic energy, because that's what heat is motion, kinetic energy. This is a single atom here. As it does receive more energy, that this structure can expand and contract. That when it does, like when we had the example of water being up over here the other day, when water reaches a certain state, there's a flip. That there's expansions going on in the oxygen and the two hydrogens, and that when more energy is put into the system, it flips. And we touched on structured water, EZ, exclusions on water is an example of structured water. There's examples of structured water in ice as well. That when UV comes in contact with water, that water structures, that it behaves totally different, and that almost all of the water in our body is structured. And then there's a whole giant stack of books here that are staying here, that I am putting in my box. And I guess we'll have to do that. We're going a little long here. But what I'm saying is the vesica piscis, this portion of this can expand and contract. And just like the ice skater, as she twirls around and brings her arms in, or he, and they spin faster and faster. And then when those subtle little changes in its kinetic energy rate alters its frequency, and that frequency relates to the magnetosphere of the planet, and that all of the planets also can fall into this understanding. So try to keep us in low vibrations, but yeah, that's a good point. I should talk about that. That this fear. Very good, very good. Bring me back to point. Fear. Still can't remember why I put grow up here. Grow. Something's growing. Growing fear? No. Well, we did touch on fear and doubt, and that fear keeps us in a lower vibrational. He's talking about this. The teachings of some of these New Age things are saying, just raise your vibrations. They're correct about raising their vibrations. I'm not disagreeing with that. That when we become depressed, when we live our lives in fear, that all of these things affect our health, and literally hampering our ability to raise our consciousness. That part of this awakening process is the expansion of consciousness. And this goes right back to what I was just talking about, that expanding consciousness, increasing our ability to process. Fear keeps you low. Knowledge raises you up. Knowledge makes you happy. The suit. The suit's going to go too, guys. What is the suit other than a representation of this hierarchy, this elite, this control structure? It's also a very important thing that we need to recognize as we move forward, that this suit also is a description of a sickness that circles the globe. It represents materialism. That I don't have my silly hat on, and I don't have this silly suit on. That this suit, why would I have this suit? Maybe to go to a wedding or a funeral. Well, it's a tuxedo. It wouldn't be appropriate to show up at a funeral. A wedding, possibly, but I would might be the focus rather than a participant that might draw attention to me. And that was the idea of the suit in the first place, that this is where you want to be. If you go back to the hierarchy, the status symbols, that so much of what this wealth, freedom, power, all of that circling the globe, this need for things. My funny hat, it's not a derby, it's not a fancy hat. It's a way I can clothe myself appropriately, conservatively, that I don't wear the winter hat in the summertime, that I have a winter hat and I have a summer hat, that I wear shorts. It's like this constant need for more and more, this hoarding syndrome, and we have. It's a mess. We have to get a handle on this. This is a hard one. The language, that's a hard one. There's a bunch of hard ones. We need to prioritize. So what's the priority? Peace. How do we achieve peace? It has to start internally. It has to do with the control of fear, the absence of fear. So we have to start trusting. We have to trust our neighbor. We have to trust our brother. We have to trust our family members. We have to extend that trust to the community. We have to, one nation has to trust another nation. That we have to look at not their weaknesses, we have to look at their strengths and how our strengths can be shared with their strengths, and how we can share resources and trade resources and get these fundamental resources. There's so much to rebuild here. We have, I live in a farming community here. How long have I gone here? An hour? Okay. I live in a toxic wasteland. The chemicals that I have a pantry full of GMO food. I'm going to put that in this pile here. I'm going to put that in the trash can. That I don't think it's healthy to eat. So would I give it to the food pantry? Would I give away poison to someone lesser than me, that down on their luck? Not lesser, equal, but down on their luck. Why would I want to poison them? If I'm going to give them something, why wouldn't I give them what I'm eating? Organic, raw. We're going to talk about food at some time again, too. See if there's any questions. I should probably quit while I'm ahead before I get into trouble. Spaceship, rabbit holes, red blood theories, mud floods. I could consider talking about the mud floods, but it has to do with hiding our history and our past. And we touched on that just a little bit, that there's small groups throughout the globe here, small groups. You can't consider China to be anything but a superpower. But they've had their ups and downs. They've had their rises and falls. Was just studying today. Where was that one at? I was studying about the forbidden. I was enjoying that book too. Tibet. Oh, I was talking about. He wanted to know about the mudfloods. There was conscious efforts to hide our history. That there are little pockets in China, there are little pockets in North America where there are pockets in southern North America, down in Mexico land. In South Africa, there's little pockets where the erasing of our history failed, and that there's some valuable information there that's not been altered that we might find helpful, interesting, and helpful. So, okay, yes, very big victory. All right, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and now I can enjoy the rest of my day off and clean up some more. See you again soon. I've got to get more of these out. I'll talk about some more science, accidentally or on purpose. Have a good day.